Good evening, and thank you, Professor Finotti. Thank you for your introduction. And let me also say how honored I feel, and I thank the ISSNAF for this privilege. I'm delighted to accept it, and I will go on saying a few things. Can you hear? Can you hear me? Yeah. Saying a few things about what this innovation is. I was listening to all the speakers who went on this afternoon, and I was so impressed by what I heard. The spirit behind their work, their passion, and I'll try to work around that a little bit. It's going to be a few pages. But I introduced by saying that the association's project, its will to bring to public awareness here in the United States, in Italy and elsewhere, the need to let loose the creative potentialities of human beings and of the institutions of research and learning, such as universities, strikes me as a rare flash of creativity. But I'm above all delighted to say that I'm fortunate that this annual event, the convocation of scholars and scientists, is organized around the theme of fundamental importance, both to universities and to the political world, let me say. I'm not going to talk about politics, but to the social world, moving beyond ourselves, to the world in which we live. You all have been talking about how the sciences make our lives better, and I agree. Innovation through science, indeed. But I was very taken with this formula, innovation through science, because it's a phrase that encapsulates the essence of science today, the open-mindedness. I won't talk for more than 10 minutes. So the open-mindedness behind its practice and its role as the way through. We go through, we innovate through science. So it's science as a way, a method, as the Greeks would call it. That's what the word meant to them, a way. But the link between innovation as the destination and the premise of the scientific research is not at all a new idea. We are repeating that which the old wisdom, ancient wisdom, has captured. It describes this idea of innovation and the way through the innovation through science. It describes modernity, actually, our world. And it actually was thematized by a 17th century philosopher, Giambattista Vico, a Neapolitan, who taught at the University of Naples in the 17th century. And he's now known today, in fact, I may be teaching Vico next term, as a theorist of history and of philosophy. But his great work is called The New Science, which argues for the necessity of a new discourse for the modern age. He felt that the old knowledge was not sufficient. Somehow other ways had to be explored. And his point of departure was that our time, modernity, was inaugurated by a series of scientific discoveries. That's what he writes about. The construction of perspective, with all the knowledge of optics and mathematics, the compass, the telescope, the barometer of Torricelli, Boyle's air pump, the microscope, Harvey's studies of the circulation of the blood. The heroes of the age for Vico were Galileo, Descartes, Columbus, Bacon, and so on, because they knew how to put to use the recent findings of science and technology. As a philosopher, Vico was also aware that the scientific innovations and subsequent achievements could undermine, if not studied carefully, the moral stability of the political experiences. There was a need, he felt, for science, but there was a need for wisdom. The wisdom to think about and practice the virtues, such as prudence, justice, the nature of laws, ethics, political order, the place of religion in the human life, etc. Vigo's 18th century solution, innovative as it was then, and was actually rediscovered well into the 19th century, is a little bit dated today. And the real challenge that we face, I believe, this is what I would like to share with you, so I hope I'm not upsetting anybody. Nobody upset me here of all the things that they were fantasizing and saying and plotting. It's very interesting. Anyway, that the challenge that we face today is the structure of our contemporary universities. Whether or not our universities here in the United States, which are the model for the Western universities, and therefore very crucial, but also elsewhere in the States, they are ready. These universities, my university, they are ready to adopt to the shifting realities of our own times. Ours is the time of a new global civilization. We have heard this idea of globalism. We are rediscovering our place in the globe. This is true. Globalism is potentially a brilliant condition, which is, however, marked, as we all know, by the tragic resurgence of violence, potentially explosive ideological differences, and no less violent differences in religious beliefs, cultural identities, or geopolitics, like old-fashioned geopolitics. The question some scholars have formulated is this: how are the universities going to educate young men and women who will interact with the peers from other social contexts? I want to go into a personal experience, which will probably illustrate the point, and I stop. Years ago, some 15 years ago, I submitted a proposal to the president of a university, who remains unmentioned, about a project, a sort of, I had in mind, a summer seminar in order to educate not our own people who are getting enough education in all the colleges and schools of our country, of this our country, to educate the elites of countries in Asia, Latin America, Africa, because I thought in my knowledge of them, my experience, encounters with them, the last time was in Santiago de Compostela in Spain, they needed to be exposed. So I thought to the cultural values, the spiritual energies underlying and shaping the extraordinary, brilliant social achievements of the United States in all spheres of economics and thought. Let them learn, I thought, about philosophy, art, history, these young students, these elites of the future, about history, music, literature, theater, political theory in our universities. The president sent me to speak to the dean of the college, who felt that the project was an exciting dream, but it was premature. This was 10, 12 years ago. Something like that, I still think, is both feasible and may be overdue. A course I taught on the Renaissance at Singapore last summer. Yale has established Yale at Singapore to students from Indonesia, China, the Philippines, Singapore. There was even a guy from Canada. All the students, however, wanted to know if they were going to experience a Renaissance. Are they going to have it there in their countries? My rejoinder was what Pico della Mirandola had taught me. He saw the Renaissance as a way of thinking, one that presupposes that study, achievements, and living all together are rooted in freedom and that the Renaissance is the period of knowledge in our tradition that cultivates the freedom of expression, the freedom of thought. I could not but mention that America, the New World, was a project of an innovative state, a new reality altogether, but really came from a knowledge of the world, the classical world. Let me finish my remarks by recalling the existence of a genuine poetic philosophical text of the 18th century, prior and going on during the revolutionary years and the establishment of this country. It's called the Federalist Papers. And I don't know if some of you haven't read it. Do yourself a favor, go and read it. The Federalist Papers, which was signed by one Publius. I was always fascinated, why that Latin name for a non-existent person? A name that stands for a number of collaborators, discussants of the political, legal, historical, and moral issues of the foundations. Samuel Adams, but above all, Thomas Jefferson, a genuinely Renaissance man and an encyclopedist, one who saw the connections between the arts and the sciences, between all aspects of knowledge. But what did they call it Publius? And then it really dawned on me, why that Roman name? And the answer must be clear. It was really a deliberate recall of ancient Rome, because the history of Rome is one which articulates the idea of history, as Vico found out 1,500 years later, as the place of innovation. This is a history as the story of new beginnings all the time. The Romans could be defeated. Aeneas, the founder, the progenitor of the founders of Rome, was defeated when he lost his homeland in Troy. And yet, he never stopped. He would go from one place to another. Innovation is the moral vision, the burden of our own historical responsibilities. Thank you for giving me the occasion to share these thoughts with you. Oh, I was wondering.
Yeah, this is the
diploma that I could hang.
Yeah. This, by the way, is a statue by Oliviero Rainaldi, the artist, an Italian artist. Oliviero Rainaldi is made on purpose for this occasion.